Germany's governing parties, the CDU, CSU and the SPD, have reached an agreement on a new framework for military service after months of internal negotiations. The decision introduces mandatory medical examinations for young men starting in 2026 and outlines conditions under which voluntary service may shift toward compulsory conscription if recruitment targets are not met. From 2026 onward, all young men born in 2008 or later will face mandatory medical examinations. In subsequent years, the requirement will apply automatically to men upon turning 18. Officials describe the measure as a structural shift intended to ensure long-term readiness, but it depends heavily on personnel capacity across medical and administrative facilities. Experts warn that achieving the large number of required examinations quickly will be challenging, as district conscription offices were shut down more than a decade ago and would need extensive rebuilding. Women will not be required to undergo medical examinations. However, like men, they will receive a standardized questionnaire as part of a national data collection effort. Authorities aim to contact and register approximately 700,000 young people each year. While men must complete the questionnaire by law, women may choose whether to participate. Both groups will subsequently receive information about potential paths into military service after the medical evaluation stage. Suitable candidates, both male and female, will be encouraged to serve in the Bundeswehr. The government stresses that service remains explicitly voluntary under the new model. SPD parliamentary group leader Matthias Miersch states it's an offer, not an obligation. Rather, it's an opportunity to consider whether one wants to dedicate a certain part of their life to public service, including military service. The Bundeswehr is working to increase the attractiveness of its military service programs. The package includes a gross monthly salary of €2,600, subsidies for qualifications such as driver's licenses, and access to a range of military career paths. Defence officials view these incentives as necessary to meet NATO capability targets. Under current alliance commitments, Germany aims to field 270,000 active soldiers by 2030. The current figure stands at approximately 180,000 personnel. This gap has prompted renewed political debate about mandatory service. Members of the coalition and opposition acknowledge that voluntary participation alone may not be enough to close the shortfall. Should recruitment numbers fail to meet national defence needs, the government has agreed that further legislation will authorise conscription. Such a system would require compulsory service from as many individuals as necessary to maintain operational readiness. CDU-CSU parliamentary group leader Jens Spahn emphasises the point, stating, should voluntary service ultimately prove insufficient, mandatory service will be necessary. We have agreed that further legislation will be required, aiming for a needs-based conscription system that obligates as many personnel as we require to maintain our defence capabilities. A lottery-based selection system previously considered during discussions on mandatory service is excluded from the current agreement. Officials note, however, that it could re-emerge as an option should future legislation move toward a broader compulsory model. As political leaders describe the framework in Berlin, images from Bundeswehr facilities across Germany illustrate the operational environment that new recruits would enter. In Aalen, North Rhine-Westphalia, recruits participate in shooting practice with the G36 assault rifle at the Westphalen Kaserne. Media access provided during training days shows soldiers conducting marksmanship drills, demonstrating the standard procedures of basic training. In Essen, recruitment officers display posters promoting service in the German armed forces. Visuals inside these offices show reception areas, registration desks, military mannequins, and informational displays highlighting available career paths. Advisors meet with prospective recruits, guiding them through application processes and entry requirements. Elsewhere, Bundeswehr honour guards welcome foreign officials, showcasing the ceremonial duties carried out in parallel with operational tasks. during a welcoming ceremony for the Czech Prime Minister at the Chancellery in Berlin. Soldiers of the armed forces, honour guard, stand to attention, a reminder of the Bundeswehr's dual role in national representation and defence readiness. At other training sites, including Oberwiechtag and Ostenholz, soldiers conduct shooting exercises, tank manoeuvres and battlefield simulations. Defence Minister Boris Pistorius appears at multiple locations, observing training routines and speaking with service members about preparedness and equipment needs. The Ministry of Defence positions these activities as part of Germany's broader effort to modernise and expand military capabilities following years of limited growth. In the town of Augustsdorf, Pistorius visits Bundeswehr Battalion 203 aboard a Leopard 2 main battle tank, reviewing operational procedures and the unit's readiness. The visit reflects ongoing efforts to strengthen armoured capabilities amid evolving European security requirements. Additional footage from Altengrabau, Saxony-Anhalt shows the minister listening to soldiers during training updates. These engagements highlight the defence leadership's emphasis on visible oversight as the Bundeswehr adjusts to new structural goals. Ceremonial images from the Naval Engineering School in Paro mark the Bundeswehr's 70th anniversary there. German naval soldiers stand in formation during a commemorative event at the Chancellery in Berlin. The anniversary underscores the institutional continuity and evolving mission of the armed forces as Germany evaluates the resources needed to meet national and alliance commitments. Recruitment efforts extend beyond formal offices and training grounds. Archival footage from Cologne shows young applicants completing computer-based aptitude tests and participating in workshops led by military officers. These outreach activities provide information on career tracks, technical roles and expectations for new service members. Across these locations, the broader objective remains consistent: expanding Germany's defence capacity. The new service model is designed to create a larger pool of medically assessed and administratively registered individuals. It relies on voluntary service to bridge the majority of the personnel gap while establishing a legal foundation for mandatory conscription if necessary. The political agreement between the CDU, CSU and SPD marks a significant shift from previous policy debates, aligning both major parties behind a two-stage system. First, voluntary service supported by mandatory medical assessments, and second, a potential fallback to compulsory conscription should voluntary recruitment fall short. For now, the coalition stresses the voluntary character of service, but the mechanism for mandatory enlistment is prepared should the Bundeswehr fail to reach its required staffing levels. Germany's new military service model is set to begin in 2026, with implementation dependent on rebuilding administrative structures, deploying sufficient medical personnel, and processing hundreds of thousands of yearly assessments. The outcome will determine whether voluntary participation meets national defence needs or whether compulsory service becomes necessary. The situation remains clear. Germany is restructuring its military service system to meet NATO commitments and ensure national readiness, while reserving the option of conscription should voluntary recruitment fail to provide sufficient personnel. As implementation moves toward the 2026 start date, federal ministries will be required to rebuild conscription infrastructure, expand medical examination capacity, and coordinate with regional authorities to process the projected volume of yearly assessments. Officials caution that staffing levels, facility readiness, and administrative throughput will determine how quickly the system becomes fully operational. Germany's political leadership maintains that all measures are designed to ensure predictable force generation at a time of rising defence demands within NATO. The government's approach establishes a structured pathway from registration to voluntary enlistment while providing a legal mechanism for mandatory service if needed, concluding a policy shift focused squarely on maintaining the country's defence capabilities.
Union und SPD haben sich nach monatelangem Streit auf ein neues Wehrdienstmodell verständigt. Die Musterung wird für alle jungen Männer zur Pflicht. Der Dienst bei der Bundeswehr soll aber freiwillig bleiben. Ab 2026 müssen sich alle jungen Männer ab dem Jahrgang 2008 mustern lassen. In den Folgejahren entsprechend alle, die das 18. Lebensjahr vollenden. Dafür braucht es allerdings genug Personal wie Ärztinnen und Ärzte und geeignete Räume. Fachleute bezweifeln, dass eine hohe Zahl von Musterungen schnell erreicht werden kann, weil nach Aussetzung der Wehrpflicht 2011 alle Kreiswehrersatzämter geschlossen wurden. Frauen müssen nicht zur Musterung, bekommen aber genauso wie Männer einen Fragebogen. 700.000 junge Leute sollen damit pro Jahr angeschrieben und erfasst werden. Frauen können den Fragebogen ausfüllen, Männer müssen dies tun. Geeignete Männer und Frauen sollen zum Dienst bei der Bundeswehr ermutigt werden. Die schwarz-roten Koalitionäre betonen die Freiwilligkeit des Dienstes.
Dass es ein Angebot ist, keine Verpflichtung, sondern ein Angebot, sich damit auseinanderzusetzen, ob man einen gewissen Teil seines Lebens auch in den Dienst der Allgemeinheit, auch des Wehrdienstes stellt.
Verteidigungsminister Boris Pistorius setzt auf die Attraktivität des neuen Wehrdienstes mit einem Bruttogehalt von 2.600 €, Zuschüssen etwa zum Führerschein und vielfältigen Karriereoptionen. Es müssen genug Soldatinnen und Soldaten gefunden werden, um die in der NATO vereinbarten Ziele erfüllen zu können. Das sind 270.000 aktive Soldatinnen und Soldaten bis 2030. Bisher liegt die Zahl bei 180.000. Eine Wehrpflicht ist möglich, wenn sich nicht genug junge Menschen für den Dienst an der Waffe finden. Experten bezweifeln jedoch, dass die Zahlen mit Freiwilligkeit erreicht werden können.
Sollte es am Ende nicht reichen in der Freiwilligkeit, braucht es auch eine Verpflichtung. Und dort haben wir miteinander vereinbart, dass es dann ja eine weitere gesetzliche Regelung braucht, dann mit dem Ziel einer Bedarfswehrpflicht, die so viele verpflichtet, wie wir dann eben auch zur Verteidigungsfähigkeit brauchen.
Ein Losverfahren ist vorerst vom Tisch, es könnte aber in Zukunft